When dealing with a falsehood, you're faced with two options. You can accept it or you can reject it. The basis upon which we take one of these actions is a product of our critical thinking capabilities and a desire to know what is true instead of confirming our bias. A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes. On Brainstorm, we choose the hard truths over the comforting lies. Reason, compassion, skepticism. This is the Brainstorm Podcast.
Hey folks, welcome to the Brainstorm Podcast Skeptic Studio. This is usually our interview portion of the show, but we had some technical issues that caused our interview to not happen. So for this episode, and for a couple upcoming episodes, I'll give you the audio from some of our talks at our Shift to Reason conference that we had in 2016. Today I'm going to give you the talk from Lavada Luening. She was a guest on Brainstorm before our conference and gave a very interesting talk on how to open up the secular movement to groups that aren't just middle-aged white guys. There is one spot in the talk where she uses the term Indians instead of Indigenous peoples or Native Americans or First Nations people. But someone pointed the error out to her later. She apologized later in the day, and that's pretty much where that ended. Beyond that, I've got a few notes to talk about at the end of the show. But for now, I hope you enjoy this talk by Lavada Luening at the Shift to Reason Conference 2016.
So our next speaker is Lavada Luening. Lavada's participation in the conference actually came about in a fairly interesting way. Shortly after the organizing committee asked me if I would be involved and be the MC for it, we got a message pointing out certain consistencies within everyone talking. Mainly that they all looked like me. Not exactly like me, but we kind of had this issue where it's another secular convention where everyone talking is another white male. And really, our community is so much more diverse than that, and it should be even more diverse than it is. Now, we were very lucky that one of the people who pointed out that was very, very gracious and said that they could actually help fix that for this year. We've already got plans in place for how to fix it even better for next year. But the person who pointed this out and was very, very gracious in being willing to come was Veda herself. So we really appreciated the fact that the oversight on our part, and it's so common, this just casual sexism where it's something that's not even thought about, it just keeps happening, got pointed out by someone who was kind enough to then also put her shoulder to the shovel, as it were, and actually give of her time and come down here to help us. So we really appreciate that. So to tell you a little bit about Lavada, she is one of the founders, or the founder of the Free Thought Alliance of Milwaukee. She is the secular she-thinker. She refers to herself as a seculebrity, which is my new favorite term for the weekend. And involved with SWIS, the Southeast Wisconsin secular she-thinkers. So I'm really excited to hear what she has to say. I think it's going to have some really positive, practical elements to it as well, which I'm excited about. And without further ado, welcome Veda.
Hello, Canada. So glad to be here. And isn't it wonderful to be surrounded by so many like-minded people? I mean, I don't really know where all of you are from. I assume it's nothing but grass outside of the city here. And no one for miles and miles, no other atheists, no other skeptics or free thinkers. I wonder how true that actually is. How many of you here are part of a secular or atheist group or free thinker group or any kind of group with similar thoughts and feelings that we have, where you're from? Can I see a show of hands? Wow, that's actually more than I expected. Well, that's good. How many of you are leaders of those groups? No, that's pretty good. Like 6? That's pretty good. Well, we can't all be chiefs. We need Indians too. Well, one of the things that I did when I first got here, when we very first started this morning, is I did a little bit of a count. I counted up all the people at the tables, and I wanted to see what the ratio of men to women was. And I'm actually kind of surprised and happy to say that it's 1/3 women and 2/3 men, which is still disproportionate to the ratio of men to women in society, but that's actually more than the average ratio that I see at the places I speak at and at the groups that I'm usually participating in, other than the female groups that I participated in. The ratio for them is usually 1 in 4. So for every 1 woman, there's 3 guys. And, this isn't my favorite term, but it gets thrown around a lot. It's a sausage fest. And, I'm from Wisconsin, and we like sausage. So there you go. For those of you who don't know me, I have a YouTube channel called The Secular She-Thinker. I also write a blog. I have my own blog channel called In the Interest of Rational Security, but I also just got put on with Skeptics Inc., writing a blog for them. I'm not a best-selling author. I'm not a scientist. I am not a biologist. I'm not anybody important like that. What I am is an organizer and an activist. And I think what I bring to the movement is my knowledge about organizational leadership and my knowledge about basically what it's like to be part of this movement as a woman. And what I want to see this movement achieve is more growth that resembles what our growth should be in regular society. So a few years ago, Pew, not a few years ago, actually last year, Pew did a research study, and they said that nons were growing in the community between men and women at about the same rate, and that nons in the community were about 20 to 25% and growing. And that's really good news. But I was listening to Greta Christina, and she was giving sort of an anthology about how movements work. She's part of the LGBTQ movement, and she was comparing that movement with the civil rights movement and also with the atheist secular movement. And one of the things that she said was that the first people to come out in a movement are usually the people who are kind of outsiders, unique, outspoken. They don't usually care what other people think about them. They're lone wolf type of people. And then the second wave of people that come out are the people who know them and love them and want to support them. And then the next set of people are the people who are the friends and family. And then it becomes a more well-accepted thing in the movement. And I think the stage that we are at right now in our movement is the stage with friends and family. And where we're getting stuck is this ratio of men to women and why the movement isn't growing. So I know this is going to kind of suck for you guys, but I'm about to point out some flaws. I'm about to point some fingers and say the word sexism and say the word misogyny and say the word feminism. Please, everybody, when you make your way to the exit, be orderly and don't trample anybody. But sexism does exist in this movement, whether we like it or not, whether we want to admit it or not, whether it's pretty or not, it's real. And I think some of the sexism that we're experiencing in this movement isn't intentional. I don't see everybody openly admitting. I mean, if I asked any one of you here, I would assume you would consider yourself an ally. You would consider yourself you may even consider yourself a feminist, but you certainly probably consider yourself a person who believes in equality. And you probably wouldn't subscribe to any of the sort of behaviors or antics that people normally consider sexist people to be participating in. But really, it's the little things that we do that what some people call microaggressions, but it's the little things that we say and do and the little things that we let slide that build up and create unsafe places for women and create environments that women don't want to come and be part of. And then in turn, they don't want to come to the meetings or the conferences. They aren't encouraged to lead these conferences. And they also don't bring their fans or their my fans, they don't bring their friends, they don't bring their families, they don't bring their children. And one thing that I firmly believe is that the hand that rules the cradle, or the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. And secular women raise secular children. And one thing that religion does better than our movement is they handle women better. Now, I know that they oppress women and that they're just awful terrible about women in leadership and all of that. But they handle women socially better. They address women's social needs better. Needs such as childcare, needs such as creating a safe environment, having meetings in safe places, having meetings in places that are accessible to women, and they are also better at reaching out to communities that are maybe of a different class. I'm looking at all of you, and I'm just going to make an assumption that you're all probably middle class or ish around there. And there's a whole segment of the population that gets ignored when I'm talking about people that are maybe in poverty or are living in places and they don't have access to their own car and they rely on public transportation and things like that. Part of what I'm talking about is having meetings that would be accessible to these people. And it would draw in a whole entire new class of people into the atheist movement. And these people are going to start, probably being women because they're the ones that I'm focused on, and I'm focused on their children. And so I think we should be having meetings in places that are accessible to public transportation. They should be in safe places. And sorry, skeptics in the pub, that sort of rules out bars. Bars aren't really places we would want children to be coming to for our meetings and things like that. And the whole purpose of this, remember, is growing the movement. Remember, women are 50% of the population, we're 50% of the talent, and we're 50% of the money. And I don't know how many of you here are business people, but that's my background, organizational leadership and business management. And I think about things in terms of marketing and in terms of money. And we're really not marketing to women very well right now. We are projecting an image of middle-aged, white males, academic, middle class, and it's kind of turning them off because it doesn't feel inviting to them. It doesn't address the needs that they have. For example, besides the child care needs, when the children come, I see we have a lady back there with her baby. I would like to see a safe place for her to be able to breastfeed her child if she breastfed. I'd like that to be an option, and even if she's the only one here with a baby, she's the only one who's concerned about breastfeeding, she might go out and tell other people, wow, they were really concerned about my needs, or other people will see that and tell their friends, and we'll be more inviting to people. There aren't any children here like in the ages of coloring books or anything like that, but coloring books, how many of you heard about the Satanist coloring book? It wasn't that great. I looked at that and I thought, why don't we have something like that for the kids that come to these meetings? How fantastic would that be? And we could give artists in our community an opportunity to do that. Preferably female artists. Wouldn't that be fantastic too? So having something enriching and educational and enlightening for the children to come and to do while we are enriching and enlightening ourselves. This is something that I feel is fundamental to the idea of growing the movement. Now, you might ask yourself, what do I care about growing the movement? My needs are being fully met. We have Richard Dawkins, and we have David Silverman, and we have Aaron Ra, and Matt Dillahunty, and all these other fantastic celebrities that that we all know and love. What more do I need? But we really do need more involvement, and we need more inclusion of the LGBTQ community and minorities, which I'm from, Wisconsin, and that Milwaukee's sort of an urban area, and I'm really used to seeing a lot more ethnic diversity where I'm from. Even in the atheist community, maybe one person. I don't know how common that is for Canada, but just inviting people and having the people who want to show up isn't enough. I think that you should be reaching out to people and actually actively inviting them. So, let's just take, for example, a university. Now, you might reach out to the Atheist, the Secular Student Alliance at the university. But there are also other groups that you can maybe reach out to, the feminist organizations on the campus, the Black student organizations on the campus. Send them invitations to attend. Maybe send them an opportunity maybe for a 10-minute speech. Something like that. When it comes to these sort of events, I know it's important to have the big names. I mean, I very much appreciate the Unholy Trinity. I'm a big fan of theirs, and they are probably one of the reasons why I get drawn to conventions as well. But if we don't provide the opportunities for people outside our favorite celebrities to come and do their talks, we won't learn who else has important things to say and add. And what I want you to do with the information that I'm telling you right now is I don't want you to take it on yourself, and I don't want you to feel bad, feel like I'm attacking you. I don't want you to feel like you've been screwing it up or whatever. I just want you to listen to what I'm saying and take it as an opportunity and a new filter to look through, so that when you go back to the organizations that you're all part of, which I was impressed, there's a lot of you that are part of organizations, I would like you to tell them what you heard here. I would like you to give them some examples that I'm giving you of how they can grow your group and how they can grow secularism, atheism, skepticism, free thought in your communities. I think that it's important to attract women, attract minorities, attract the LGBTQ community, and to do the things that they will find appealing. Now, some of the things they find appealing are the safe places, the enriching things to do for their children, but other things they might find appealing is when you have your meetups listed and people can invite, RSVP to the meetings or whatever. Some women, when they look at those lists and they see that they're all men, they think, oh, this isn't a place for me. I'm not sure if I want to go be part of this. Be aware of how they're seeing that. Also be aware of where you're having the meeting and how that might be perceived to them. So if you have your meetup at a bar, they might think that this is a meetup that's not that serious, or there's a hookup. It's certainly not a place for kids. It might not be there to meet their needs. Women don't have a lot of time out of their month to dedicate to this movement. I mean, I do. I have to admit, I don't have children. I'm not a person who's easily put off or scared away. In fact, the more resistance you give me, the more likely I am to fight you. But not all women are that way. So some women are very easily scared off. So when you have your meetings and you have people who are there just to hook up or just to meet someone, I mean, I know that we all want to meet people who are like-minded as friends and as partners, but these meetings aren't solely for that. A lot of us are coming for information, especially if we're coming about information that we want to use to help our families. Secular women might be interested in, how does a secular mom have the birds and the bees talk with her kids? How does a secular mom address prayer in schools? How does a secular mom address, bullying? How does a secular mom teach her kids how to be feminists and not be sexist? These are issues that women might want to focus on that you might not be thinking about. So I'm going to ask you to put on this filter and think about it. So when you go back to your groups, you can say, okay, well, we want to attract women. Women might be concerned about sexism. How might we be doing things that could be perceived to be sexist within our group? Hitting on women, uninvited sexual advances, that might be something that turns women off. Women certainly talk about that stuff and spread that message. So if that's happening, you need to actively address it. And I know that can be really hard, especially because a lot of men in our movement consider themselves feminists or consider themselves allies. But in this case, you're going to have to be active. I didn't get a chance to talk to a lot of you personally, but I don't know how you feel about the word feminist. The word feminist kind of has a stigma attached to it, similar to the word atheist, and not a lot of people want to call themselves feminists. They want to say the word egalitarian, or they want to use the word equality instead. But I use the word feminist for a specific reason, and that reason is because it denotes an interest in women's issues. And I'm a secular feminist activist. I'm trying to raise awareness that these issues exist and that there's things that we can do to resolve these issues. So actively being a feminist and actively addressing these issues is going to be important when it comes to growing the movement. I actually wanted to do things a little bit differently than the other speakers did. I wanted to have time to let you ask me questions outside of the panel because my talk seems to be really different than everyone else's. So my actual talk's going to be a little bit shorter. So just be prepared with questions if you want to ask me anything. And I also wanted to take a second and acknowledge Dusty. So she's like, what? In my original speech, I had listed a few secular feminist activists that I admire and that I looked up to. One of those was Madalyn Murray O'Hair. Another one was Vashti McCollum. Do you guys know who Vashti McCollum is? She also, along with Madalyn Murray O'Hair, became part of the movement because they had issues with their children in school and religion in school and how that it was affecting them. And Dusty, I would just like, you are among some very esteemed alumni. So congratulations to you. And thank you for being a feminist. And thank you for being able to stand up in our community and speak out against these things happening with your kids and be strong and being a good role model for them. I really appreciate you doing that. Good for you. So another thing that I wanted to talk about that I think will attract more women to our movement and help our women grow are some of the things that religion does that we're not doing, such as charity. How many of you are involved in groups that do charity? That's okay. Is it your atheist groups that do the charity? No? Yes, you couple? Well, one of the things that I think religion is beating us out on is their ability to marshal the troops and do good charity work. Last year, I was lucky enough to be part of the PastaCon in Pennsylvania. Brian Fields put this on, and at the end of the conference, he did it wasn't a food drive, it was actually a food packaging event where they worked with an outside organization and they packaged up meals that were like low-cost meals. I think one meal for a family of four costs 25 cents, and they did a fundraiser to pay for it, and then at the end, all the speakers and all the attendees, which would be all of us, if this is who we were talking about, gathered in a room with the tables all set up, and they all, like in factory assembly style, put together these meals, boxed them up, and they went out and fed thousands and thousands of people and thousands of families. And I felt so good about that, and it really wasn't that hard. That isn't a direction that I would like to see our movement go. I think that it would help us grow, it would help repair our reputation in regular society, and it would be an opportunity for us to actually be, doing good things when we come to these conferences and, building up our relationships with each other. I was packing food alongside Richard Carrier and Aaron Raw was there, Matt Dillahunty was there. It was fantastic. It was so wonderful. I would like to see us do more of that. I think that would be one way to grow the movement and attract more women, because women are really minded and we're really oriented for that kind of thing. When we do something, we want it to be impactful. If you only have 2 hours a month to dedicate to something like this, you don't want to just go into a room and listen to a bunch of guys complain about why God isn't real. No offense, you guys. I know there was a lot of God talk today and a lot of Bible talk today. But when I consider the title of this conference, A Shift to Reason, I'm thinking reason as in equality and sexism is unreasonable, and I think that misogyny is irrational, and since that's the kind of world that I'm coming from and that's the kind of activism I do, I wanted to make my talk be about that. I wanted to raise awareness with you guys so that you can change the culture that you are working in within your communities. I actually had a funny joke in here about the unholy trinity, about how we need a women's group like that, something like we can call ourselves the Nons, and we could wear something like this with a habit. It could be fantastic. I do it. But anyway, our movement, I mean, I don't even know how many of you agree with me calling this a movement. That's not even something everybody is agreeing on. But I consider this a movement, and movements are about change. And if we want to change the movement and grow the movement, we're going to have to change ourselves and address the issues we have within ourselves, the sexism that and women can be sexist too. There can be sexism against women on women, women on men, men on women. I mean, it's everywhere. It's ingrained in us. It's because we were raised in a religious society, and that is left over from religion, whether we are part of that religion or not. So I'm acknowledging that it sometimes is intentional, sometimes is unintentional, but we have to look at ourselves if we really want to change and grow this movement. And another reason that we want to grow this movement is so that we can have more political power. I see too many instances like Dusty's where people are exercising their political power to insert religion into our lives. And I know that Canada is a little bit different than America, but in America, I like to start from the place that it's a secular society and that secularism is good for everyone because it gives us all an equal playing field. And when political power is given to religion, it's taken away from us. And so when the Pew Research shows that our group is growing, then that means to me that the political power is growing. And when the political power is growing, then our lives are going to be better. And secularism benefits everyone, so that means everyone's lives are going to be better. And that's the way to go. That's the change to make. That's the direction to move. And I'm really grateful to see all of you here being part of that. And I hope that you help me with my cause. I hope that this is a call to action that gets you excited about the changes that you can make in your communities. And you can have fun doing it too. I mean, it doesn't have to be all boo-hoo as me. And I know probably all of you don't get as many dick pics in your mailbox as I do, or rape threats even, death threats. And like I said before, the movement gets started by people who are willing to knock down those barriers, bulldoze down, take those hits, weather the storm, and build the shelter so that the rest of the community can come in and join us. So that's where we're at. We are at that cusp where families are going to start raising secular children, and the society is going to start moving that direction. But in order to do that, we have to create a safe environment that welcomes women. So I think that is it for that. What I would like you guys to be thinking of as far as your questions, whatever questions you have, but also ask me questions about maybe some examples of activities maybe, or problems that you've run into, maybe some solutions that we can come up with together that might help us attract more women to the movement. So, or you could all 100% agree with me and we can be done. Dusty?
So I have a question of what do you think is the best approach? I have trouble socially. We have a number of strongly religious friends, and that's fine and great for them. But I have not found a successful way to insert my belief system or non-belief system or whatever you want to call it without feeling like my friends feeling like I'm challenging them or I'm discounting their beliefs or I'm against them somehow. I socially find it difficult to stand up for what I believe respectfully, I feel, without them feeling like it's attacking them, it's negative towards them, it's anything against them. If they have strong religious beliefs and that's part of their family, I am respectful towards that. But I don't feel like currently we have a society that allows me to stand up and be proud of what I believe in side by side with them. Does that make sense?
So I'm just going to try to repeat your question back. You're wanting to know how a person who isn't naturally assertive and naturally outspoken, how you can fight back against the oppression that you feel.
Well, I want to be able to stand up for what I believe and say what I
Do you not want to be the bad guy?
I don't know. I haven't found a successful way to do that without strongly religious people feel like I'm attacking them. What they believe and what they say. I think that, in a lot of general circumstances in the community, we can all be side by side, and they believe what they want to believe, and I believe what I want to believe, and that's great. But I feel like once it's something that I start talking about openly, they feel like that's an attack on what they believe. And I'm just wondering if you or anybody else has suggestions for that to be more successful.
Well, I think that where this starts from is we all want to be nice guys. Nobody really wants to be the bad guy, other than the Madeleine Murray O'Hares of the world and the Lavada Luenings of the world, who don't care what people think of us, and we are willing to be activist-minded and go out there and do that. Not everybody has the energy for that, and I understand that. But that doesn't mean that you can't participate in other ways. Wearing your flair, wearing your atheist shirts, your pins, your earrings, flying your banners, using your bumper stickers. Those are all passive ways to let people know you don't agree with them. It can invite conversations with them, and you can handle those the best way you can. Another way to fight back is to teach your children how to critically think and how to handle themselves in the arguments that they're going to face, and teach them the fundamentals. You don't have to teach them, Richard Dawkins' God delusion cover to cover. You don't have to teach them that attacking people is okay if you're not okay with that. But being able to defend what they believe is something that they're going to have to do, especially when they're fighting against other people who are fervently defending what they believe as if it's life or death. And in fact, in some parts of the world, this is life or death, and we have to remember that too. But you can do the nice guy approach and be passive. You can. It depends on who you're arguing with or who you're facing. I like to have a toolkit of debate. I'm not an expert on anything, but I think I know enough science that if I need to debate someone based on science, if they want to use science to defend religion, I think I have enough knowledge that I can do that. If they want to use history to defend religion or some other logical fallacy, I know enough about the historicity of the Bible and the historicity of Jesus that I can pretty much, knock that argument down. There's little things. It depends on the person you're arguing with or the person you're debating with. But I would say when it comes to addressing these issues in the broader community, leading by example is important. I know that we don't have it all perfect in our community yet. I know that we still have issues of stealing and killing and raping and all these other horrible things that are prevalent just because we're human beings. But we should be trying to lead by example, not judging other people, but by taking care of our own business and our own backyard, challenging each other when we see someone within our community doing something wrong, whether it's sexism, misogyny, stealing, being liars, plagiarizing, or any other kind of unethical thing like that. We need to be able to challenge each other so that when we're facing them in their community and we're challenging them in their community, whether it's the sexual abuse of children or whatever, at least we'll have that leg to stand on. I think that that's important. Did that help? I saw a lady's hand back there in the back earlier.
Hi, my name's Helen Beach. I'm from Calgary. I'm one of the directors of Center for Inquiry. I have a couple of things. I actually am one of those ones that hates the word feminism, but I am a feminist. I will openly say that. I have had to get rid of P.Z. Myers because he is so over the top. I think some of you know the kind of activism that he does, and it just really gets up my nose. But to the 2/3 of the men here, I have a comment, and we have lost board members because of this. Guys, you talk, we listen. When we talk, you turn and talk to your buddy. Don't do that. Listen to what the women have to say. And that happens all the time. Okay, I'm done with that. Second thing, you can fight with me later.
I'm going to make a note.
Second thing is get a little fundraiser going. There's Dan Barker and Dale McGowan have children's books that you can get in your kids' libraries. Bring them in, have lots of them around. And if something happens, your child has that book, have those books in your house when other children come over to play as well. So I think that kind of a resource is really, really important. Evolutionary books. I have a whole collection of evolutionary books for children. Get a fundraiser going. Get those books in the schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, she's right about how seriously men take women's issues. One of my goals was that I wanted to see 50% participation in these kind of conventions and things like that. I wanted to see 50% female speakers, and I wanted to see 50% female attendance. And then I heard someone say something about how they think that that's some sort of affirmative action and that somehow that lowers the quality of attendees and lowers the quality of speakers. And there may be a point to that, but I think that we should be actively trying to change that, and we should do more work to seek out and change that. But I think what it really comes down to is that they're afraid that if they invite these women, the men that come will stop listening. And what I would like to see is the men that come actually care about the issues that we're bringing up. Because don't you have daughters? Don't you have wives? Don't you have moms? I'm sure that these issues affect you even in an indirect ways like that. And there's ways for you to, rationalize caring about somebody that doesn't have a penis. So I would like to see when women talk, men listen, just like she said. I think that that's important. Another thing that this reminded me that I wanted to point out is that we should be supporting women in their endeavor to put women's issues in the forefront of entertainment, books, by secular women's books, female secular authors' books, support secular female actresses, storylines that involve secular women, whether it's comic books or movies or fictional characters. These are important ways that we put our values back into the culture. They say life imitates art. So we should be supporting the art that women produce, that women are a part of, and art that reflects women in our community. I don't think that we're doing enough of that. I don't think enough of that is out there. And there's going to be intersectional ways that we can do that, that draw more women in from other demographics, whether the, stories about what might it look like for a homeless atheist woman. Have you ever thought about that? You ever thought about what it might feel like to go to a charity or a food bank and get food, but you don't believe in God, but that's really the only people that are serving the food, and in order to do, you have to sit and listen to the sermon. That might be an interesting story for us to tell. And when we hear that story, how might that affect our lives? How might that affect the lessons that we teach our children? And how might that affect the way we do outreach or charity in the future? I mean, that's just one example, just one tiny example of intersectionality and feminism and secularism. I saw a hand over there. Oh, she moved over here. Okay. Go ahead.
I'm Julia from Moose Jaw. I'm going to be working with the LGBT community. I'm really glad you brought up the points you did, because that's what I feel is important too with the movement. It's about how religion has oppressed people for so long, and I feel like the secular community could be a way to lift that oppression. And I really related to the comment about being able to talk about what you believe without offending anyone, because even when it doesn't come to religion, most people I talk to say, well, it's okay to not be religious, but it's not okay to not agree with God or to put other people down for believing in God. So I was wondering if you could elaborate on that. I had another point, but... Well,
when it comes to people, I do think that we should be respectful. Nobody deserves to be attacked or brutalized because we're all people and we all have different backgrounds and different stories. But that doesn't mean ideas can't be attacked and ridiculed. Religion is an idea. That's really all it is. And if you're talking to someone who is feeling it's personally attacked because you're attacking their religion, maybe you should back up for a second and explain to them that their religion, from your point of view, is just an idea. And explain to them that secularism is a separation of church and state. And if you start from there and you tell them that you are separating their ideas from who they are as a person, I know that we all build our character from the ideas and the beliefs that we have, but those ideas and beliefs can change. But the fact that I'm a human being is not going to change. So, if you do that, I think that you're going to get farther. But don't be afraid to offend people, because offending people is what starts conversations. I don't know how many times I have said something offensive and, a lot of times even wrong, and it starts a conversation that either moves the person closer to me or me closer to them. And also remember that these conversations aren't always about who you're talking to. It's about who's listening. So when we're having conversations on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, and we have all of our friends and fans and followers that are watching with their popcorn, just enjoying the show, those are the people whose minds were changing. My mind didn't ever get changed because somebody got in my face and told me I was wrong. I was a Christian until I was 25. I'm from Oklahoma. My grandfather was a Seventh-day Adventist preacher. These were things I believed too. But listening to other people, the cognitive dissonance and these little tiny steps that I took along the way are what moved me to where I needed to be. And people offended me, and I got over it, and I've offended lots and lots of people, and I'm sure they'll get over it too. What really concerns me, though, is the tendency in families and communities to reject people who are different, whether they're gay, lesbian, trans, or whether they're atheist, or whether they, get themselves involved in a relationship that they don't agree with, whether it's with an interracial person or whatever. That saddens me a lot. And unfortunately, that's the kind of thing that will only change when society changes, when society gradually moves forward. I've already lost my family. I've already lost lots of friends. What I'm hoping will change is that in the future, because the new people in my life that know me and love me, and they get to know me as a person, and it's really hard to hate people that you know as a person. So you just got to get out there and have those conversations. And if you're a nice guy, be a nice guy, and if you're an asshole, be an asshole. Just you do you, booze. What you got to do. So, did you have another question?
Yeah, the second part had to do with the prayers in the schools and politics, and I know of other organizations that center around spirituality or God, and I was wondering, I know of an organization that's quite oppressive. It's supposed to be a self-help group, and I was ostracized from it because of my personal beliefs, and I'm just wondering, how do you help other people who are involved in that sort of group?
Well, this is what I would encourage you to do, since you oftentimes cannot change groups that already exist. How many of us would like it if someone came into our group and tried to change the dynamic of our group, and tried to insert their beliefs into our group? And I don't know how many times people have come to free thought meetings and thought that free thought means you can think anything you want to think. So they come to a free thinking meeting thinking they can talk about aliens or Jesus or whatever else crazy thing they want to talk about. And you have to tell them, no, this isn't the place for that. Go somewhere else. That may be what's happening in this other group, and you're the person that they're asking to go somewhere else. But what I want you to do is I want you to be a leader. I want you to seek out the people who are like you and who can learn from the things that the story you have to tell and the experience that you have, and start that group. And there are other people out there like you, and you might go to your first meeting and be the only one there. You might go to the second meeting and there's only two people there. But eventually you will reach the people you need to reach, and then you're going to be their hero. I mean, that's what activism is about. That's what this movement is about. You got to change the dynamic, and that's kind of risky sometimes, but using those experiences where you've been the one to be rejected, use that as fuel to help you move this movement where it needs to go. Thank you for that question, by the way.
We have time for, I think, one more question here.
I wanted to thank you for speaking up from the point of view of not just information and intellectualism. I have been a non-believer, an atheist for many years, and it seems that the movement for a long time has been about debate, controversy, disagreement, conflict, sometimes verbally aggressive. That does tend to move a certain component, and I think very much of the feminine style of personality away from the movement. Your suggestion to take action, do good, change the world, affect our environment, and move forward creates a different view of atheism than many people have. And I think it would open the movement to a larger component of our culture. And I want you to talk about possibly some things a person can do to move beyond debating whether there's a God or not. I don't think we're here to change the world and everyone's point of view, but this is an opportunity to allow us to do some good together as a community. And then people who are looking for a different community might join us rather than seeing us as a negative component.
I agree with that. She has a point about a lot of people in our movement were just naturally contrarian. I don't personally see that as a bad thing, but I do understand that it's a big turnoff, and that if you subscribe to gender normative ideas, you could say that men are more aggressive and women are not, or women are more submissive, and I don't necessarily always agree with that either. But when it comes to growing our movement, we have to think of it from a marketing perspective. I mean, do we want to market to the most aggressive amongst us all the time? I don't think that that's true. I think that a way to get around that is to have an idea of intersectionality and inclusiveness, reaching out to people and groups that we maybe thought wouldn't be interested. I really don't like it when people say, oh, well, you know, women aren't rational. They don't really care about these things we talk about. That's why they don't come to the meetings. I don't think that's true. I think they do care. They don't maybe care as much as you care. Maybe they care a little bit about arguing and debating the facts and about getting to the science and looking at the statistics and the demographics. And then maybe they also care about, you know, not getting raped, you know. Maybe they also care about how they're going to, you know, teach their children about how not to get fooled, you know, how not to believe, you know, how do you handle Santa Claus? I mean, that's a really great parental secular issue. It doesn't even have anything to do with God. How do you handle fairy tales and not lying to your children? I mean, the parents are people that we want to include. How do we handle teaching our sons about what consent means? You know, there's ideas about what, you know, consent is and what it isn't, and I would like to be able to reach out to people who maybe could be helping us with getting these messages out and inviting them to the table. In America, I don't know if you guys are having this issue, but we're having a huge issue with trans people in bathrooms. I mean, it's really, really crazy, but apparently there's a group of people that think that whatever sex you were born with is the bathroom that you should use. And they're not thinking that if you are a transgender person, you may be born with a hoo-ha, but you look like a dude, so you're going to be using a women's bathroom looking like a dude under the rules that they're trying to make up. That's a conversation they need to have. So, you know, including even them, include transgender, getting their points of view, the gay community. I know that we've been doing really, really good, including the LGBTQ community in the secular movement. But we could do better, because I've listened to YouTube shows, and I hear a lot of sexism and a lot of homophobia, a lot of racism too. So racism is another place that we need to work on. But being inclusive, making safe places for women in particular, safe places for the LGBTQ community, safe places for minorities. And you just got to invite them. You got to invite the brave among them, and then invite the brave to invite their friends and family. And this movement will grow, I promise. And when it grows, it will be so much better. The fights we fight, we won't have to fight alone. It won't be 91% of the people agreeing with these people. If you could get the message out to those parents of what secularism really means and how this really affects the rights that your children are losing by them imposing that on them, I think their minds will change. It might not change if you get in their face spitting and screaming at them, but, have that conversation with somebody, and then they'll hear it, and then it will change. And inviting people and trying to make this community be a safe place, I think these are all ways that will make the movement grow, and that's what I really care about. I mean, it's not really all about women. It's not really all about our kids. It's not really all about men. It's about all of us. It's about the movement, what the movement cares about, and moving the movement forward and changing. And, nothing that stays the same is, if something stays the same and never changes, it's not good. That's one of the problems with religion, is that it's been the same for a really long time, and it is stuck in the past, and that's not what we're about. Secularism should be a bright, shining beacon of equality, and right now it's not quite there yet, but I know we can do it. I believe in all of you. Did you have a question, honey? I know he said no more, but go ahead. Oh, great question. She wants to know how old are you? She's 14. So glad you came. 14 years old. What grade is that? Freshman? Freshman in high school? Oh, perfect. I think that one way that you can change the world is start a secular student group in your school. I don't know what the rules are in Canada. I'm so America specific, and I really apologize for that. But in America, there are rules that say if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. So if there are religious programs on school, religious groups on school grounds, then they cannot stop any atheist groups from happening. And if they try to stop it, you have a court case. So we kind of break in and break down those barriers because that's the way things are structured in America. But talking to Dusty earlier, I got kind of the exact opposite inclination in Canada, that there is no such secular stipulation that everybody has to start from, that secularism is sort of just a natural tendency in your community that some people fight against. So I would say start a club, give it some really snazzy name with a cool acronym, get matching T-shirts, signs, pick a fight, have a debate, crash a dance, do a picket, do a protest. That's a really good way to get some attention. Get on the news, write op-eds, write down your story, keep track of everything that's happening, and who knows, in 4 years, you might be so famous that the Richard Dawkins Foundation is paying for your college. So do it. I'm not joking. This is a way for you to make it happen. With that said, I would like to thank the Brainstorm podcast for inviting me. I would like to thank CFI for putting this on. I'd like to thank all of you for coming and paying the price to make this thing happen. I hope you take the information that I've told you back to the communities that you come from, and you perpetuate this idea of activism and organization for secularism where you are, and make it safe for women, and invite the women that you know, and it'll be wonderful. So thank you guys so much.
Okay, so that's the Lavada Luening talking at 2016's Shift to Reason conference. I hope that we can get another conference going here soon. That we're just trying to get our communication back in place because life is so busy and everybody's been so busy over the last year and a half to 2 years. I guess 2 years now since we had the Shift to Reason 2016. But anyway, a couple things about the show. First, the schedule is going to change a little bit. Our regular Monday release makes it so that I have to work on things on the weekend when I'm supposed to be spending that time with my family. So I'm going to work on things on Monday, and then new episodes will be out on Tuesday mornings instead of Monday mornings. Extra episodes will be out on Fridays, and I'm still going to be trying to put out 2 a week, but as you know, that may not always happen. Patrons will, of course, only be charged for the first episode of each week, but they do get access to all the episodes early. This set of 2 weeks is going to be a bit weird because we didn't do our Brainstorm live show, so there's no Rec Table or Shift to Reason radio. This conference audio is going to be in place of the Skeptic Studio. Friday is going to be a rebroadcast of the Next in My Hardcore Skeptic series, which is my interview with Dr. Christy Winters. Next Tuesday will be an interview that I do this week if I can get something going, or it'll be another talk from the conference. And then I don't have anything lined up for the following Friday release, but that night we go back to our regular live show on the night of May 11th with our guest Baba Brinkman, and hopefully everything works that night. I really appreciate everybody understanding, and I really apologize for the weirdness and the lack of a normal episode this week. As for regular Brainstorm stuff, we got some listener feedback. We got a ton of comments on YouTube this last couple weeks. Our chat about Harris and Klein got a lot more attention than I was expecting. And when we put out our mini video on our Jordan Peterson chat, it got, 150, 200 views. The Harris Klein discussion has, I think it's at almost 3,000 now. That's one of our most successful videos. So that brought a lot of attention to that video or some to our other videos. And I'm trying to work on the way we do YouTube videos just to increase, a little bit of exposure, shorter snippets, more appealing to people on YouTube. But I'm not going to talk about any of the comments on the Harris and Klein discussion because I'd have to pick out favorites or I'd have to pick out the worst, and I don't really want to play with that. But I do delete shitty comments. Basically anything that calls names or is bigoted that I catch, or anything that's just, being shitty. If you think that I'm going to be insulted or somebody on my panel is going to be insulted by the thing that you say, then just imagine that I'm going to delete that comment. Because I'm not here to entertain assholes. I'm here to entertain people that actually want to listen to us. So anyway, I'm tempted to delete any comment that even seems arrogant, but a lot of them are that way. But avoiding the Harris Klein discussion, a video, on our Sweet Jesus Ice Cream video, 2Liter J said, LOL, religious nuttery, LOL. Lost sheep you all are. And, I appreciate you. You're kind of a funny person that thinks that you come to a video where we discuss somebody who's definitely over the top with their religious craziness, and you get to pick and choose and call us lost sheep. It's just a joke. You're kind of a funny person. That's fine. Be a funny person. On our History of American Atheism video, actually that was one of our long ones, and Tyler Lovins, who is partners with Justin Clark on the Reason Revolution community, he said, Hey Corey, Renee, Angela, Lisa, Brandon, and Dave. What a group. I loved your conversation with Justin. He's a great guy, a good friend, and very knowledgeable about history. I'll be interested to hear what you think about my article on Peterson. He actually shared it on his Twitter the other day, calling it pretty careful, which seems high praise from a guy always talking about speaking carefully. I know it's lengthy, but trust me, it's less of a monstrosity than it was developing into. The material just covers so many areas that it's difficult to narrow down a synthesis, but that's what I attempted to do. Anyway, thanks for the great episode. And I thank you, Tyler, for the great comment. I mean, I think you and I will never see eye to eye on Jordan Peterson, but I will take a read at your article. I did start it, but when things are long, it takes me a while to get through them. So, thanks for that. On the Jordan Peterson video, LaRousse Kenneth said, quote, "There are a lot of women in this conference," quote, end quote. And, I mean, 2 women on a panel of 5 people doesn't seem like that many. So, I don't know what you're talking about, really. On the Talking About People video, Practical Magic 9 from the Packard Pokesat podcast said, "If you look at the issue from how we view men, sex, and prowess, both the teenage boy being seduced by a female teacher and an adult male teacher conquering a nubile teen girl, the logic is consistent. Societally, we see male sexuality as proof of virility and status. We see women as consenting and needing subjugation. We see women as tempting and wanting to be treated this way. I think that we also justify this by objectifying both sexes. Dehumanizing is how we distance ourselves from these very morally questionable ideas. Gossip, the anonymity of the internet, etc. are also easy ways to remove ourselves from ownership. But now that is changing. It's easier to be held accountable for what we say and think." And I think that she nailed it. I mean, the way we view men and women and sex and the objectification of people, as well as the shaming of people who don't fit into our very narrow ideas about sexuality, I think it's all very consistent. Like, the men are predators, the women are the prey in the way that people view sexuality. And I think that that's pretty demonstrable. I think that's pretty obvious within society. Thanks for the question, or for the comment, Practical Magic. On Twitter, @Jeff Nord said, "Enjoyed this discussion on Brainstorm Pod about people. The overall approach to the Klein-Harris events is much appreciated, particularly in light of Harris's most recent housekeeping before the episode with Sean Carroll. I think that, and Lisa and I disagree about Sam Harris quite a bit, but I think this recent thing where Sam Harris said that he's done with the far left, and he thinks of Klein as far left, I think he really... I think he's just ignoring his bias in the way that he said that he doesn't have any, right? He thinks he's not thinking tribally, and then he condemns and dismisses an entire group of people, many of which he doesn't even know their philosophy, because he's never actually spoken to somebody from the far left. Like, I know that people say he talks to a lot of different people with a bunch of different ideas, but I have yet to hear him talk to an actual communist. Like, since when have you talked to the far left if you haven't talked to an actual socialist? Like, I'm sorry, that's not how this works. Klein is still a capitalist in a capitalist society. He's a lefty. He's a social justice advocate. He's actually a guy I really like. But far left? Sorry, Sam. You don't know what the fuck that means. But thanks for the comment, Jeff. @Jeff Nords on Twitter. I also want to mention that I got a couple messages from friends and fans of the show that were a bit concerned with the way we handled the Klein-Harris discussion. Sometimes we lose sight of the damage we do when we act like a discussion about race and IQ has no real-world implications. People of color face a barrage of racism and stereotyping that can cause them to lose job opportunities. It can cause them to have trouble finding housing, and it could cause them to have trouble with banks, or in the extreme, it could cause them death in facing police who make assumptions. And I'd like to take this chance to apologize to anyone who was hurt by our discussion. And like I say, like, we're a mostly white group, like, so we don't always get it right. I hope that we are learning, and I hope that we can develop as time goes on. I really am sorry that we handled it in an insensitive way. We also got an email from listener Will Driver, who we had as a guest on the show last summer. And he said, "Hey, I have a longer email to send once I sit down and listen to History of American Atheism while at my computer. I was amazed by that show. I have to note my thoughts while listening, but more on that later." So he continues, I have stopped my jog to email you from my phone because I think it's important. You mentioned possibly not doing the one-on-one interviews anymore. These are the best. I learn so much and get in-depth looks at different perspectives. Please don't quit these. I love the crew, but these are powerful. So that's really good. On a side note, he says, I had the kidney surgery on April 4th. He was going to donate a kidney. I'm recovering well, hence the jogging. The donated kidney is functioning very well. The recipient caught a post-surgery infection but is now doing well and should get out of the hospital soon. There are 3 more donations scheduled because of what I did. That means 4 total lives saved so far. Hopefully the chain continues. Okay, back to jogging. I appreciate that, Will. I really do. Not the least of which, I really appreciate that you put your own life in a position where it was, that is a surgery, that is a risk. You faced that down so that people who needed help would be helped. And I admire that. As for the comment on me maybe not doing the one-on-one interviews, it just seems like they don't get nearly the downloads that the rest of them do. Maybe there's something to the schedule. Maybe I do too many shows. But I really appreciate the feedback. And I mean, if you're getting something out of it, then I'll continue to do it. On to Patreon. Will, good pal Will, upped his Patreon donation. And I really appreciate that. You can do that. You can become a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/brainstormpodcast if you want. I really appreciate anybody who supports the show. It's really important to share it. It's really important to interact with us. Let us know that we're doing something that you value. Or constructive criticism is also always appreciated. But there's no new patrons this week. Again, thanks Will for increasing your Patreon donation. That brings us to the top patrons, which now includes Will, Bassett, Destin Doesn't Suck That Much, Bob Glenn, Daryl, Aaron, and Positively Skeptical. We got no new reviews on iTunes or Facebook this week. I have nothing to plug except for the YouTube channel. I've been working hard on that. I've actually been also working on the Hardcore Skeptic series. I still have a few interviews to do with that that I did and that I need to process. And then I have a few people that I want to interview regarding social justice. But that's fine. If you want to go to subscribe to Brainstorm Podcast on YouTube, that would be cool. Also, give our videos a thumbs up. Maybe thumbs down some shitty comments if I don't catch them. you know, help the show out. Help us out. For everything else, you can check out the show notes at brainstormpodcast.com or thebrainstormpodcast.com and our website, brainstormblog.net. Thanks to all of our financial supporters, Stephanie, Zach, the Utah Outcasts, Bassett, Will, Aaron, Daryl, Destin Sucks, Bob Glenn, Destin Doesn't Suck That Much, Magnus, several species of small furry animals gathered together in a cave, Positively Skeptical, Rob. Oh, and Rob. If you want to join them and help the show grow, then you can do that at patreon.com/brainstormpodcast. You can also support us by donating to our GoFundMe for the conference at gofundme.com/shift-2-reason-conference-2018. We're over $1,000. Again, I think I mentioned it earlier. We're still working on this. $1,000 doesn't get you much. We can't really host a good sized conference with that much, but we can work towards something. And if we can get things going, then maybe we can start selling some tickets. Or if you want to support the show, you can go buy stuff at tpublic.com/stores/brainstorm-podcast-gear. You can join us every second week when we broadcast live on brainstormradio.net. Our next show is on May 11th, and our guest will be Baba Brinkman, the science rapper. I want to thank Lavada Luening for speaking at our conference in 2016. I think that was still a good talk. there's been a lot of political back and forth with people, and I don't think very many people that I know are still connected to Lavada, but I still really appreciate this talk, and I really appreciate her coming to our conference. Well, thanks to Dave for our intro music. Thanks to Aaron Rabbi from the Embrace the Void podcast for doing the new intro voiceover. You can find his podcast at voidpod.com. Thanks to Alex Capper-Murdoch for doing the voiceover for our ads, and thanks to Jason Camo for our outro music. You can find his stuff at aloststateofmind.com. All music played is either with permission or under the SOCAN license to play. For more information on SOCAN, you can check out the music license info page on our website, brainstormblog.net. Remember to give us a rating, a thumbs up, or a fave on your podcatcher of choice. Join our Facebook group, like our page, follow us on Twitter, share the show, and spread the word. Thanks for listening, and remember, the truth matters.
This is an opinion-based podcast. Each person on the podcast is responsible for their own opinions, and those opinions don't necessarily reflect the views of the rest of the panel. Any guests or anyone associated with the people on the podcast, such as spouses, partners, children, other family members, friends, or employers. No one person speaks for the podcast with the possible exception of Corey, and he doesn't speak for anyone else on the show. The Brainstorm podcast does not represent the views of our sponsors.
We just wanted to say thanks to everyone who listens to us, shares the show, gives us a rating on iTunes or Stitcher, or supports us through Patreon and Gumroad. We don't have a lot of interactions with our listeners, but what we have had proves that we attract some of the best people around. Smart, kind, and cool. An audience truly worthy of the titles hardcore and woo-free. Thanks for helping us make the world a smarter place.